Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Giuseppe.
This week we review Golden Globe winning film The Revenant and Golden Globe nominated film The Big Short, horror films Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, and The Forest, plus three home media moments for you. The most watched film in Netflix history, believe it or not, Adam Sandler's The Ridiculous Six, plus foreign film Phoenix, and Scientology documentary Going Clear. And now that the Oscar race is in full swing, we have our annual list of who and what were snubbed with this year's nominations. And also, Guilty Pleasure Month continues with my pick, 90s comedy, Dirty Work. First up is The Revenant with a big surprise opening weekend, about $38 million. Let's hear about The Revenant, Justin, coming off a hot Golden Globe win.
Leonardo DiCaprio plays Hugh Glass, a frontiersman hunting for pelts along the Louisiana Purchase when his party is attacked by Native Americans, and, in his case, a vicious grizzly bear. Glass is left so horribly mangled that he's eventually left for dead by Captain Andrew Henry and John Fitzgerald, played by Domhnall Gleeson and Tom Hardy, until somehow managing to beat the odds and begin his 200-mile odyssey for revenge. If I had to describe The Revenant in one word, it would probably be visceral. There's a lot of detail in this, and because of that, it's less dialogue heavy and much more atmospheric. There's a lot to consider, there's a lot to talk about in regards to the nature of the characters, and I think because of that, it requires a lot of reflection. I've kind of gone back and forth with this one over the course of watching it. I'm actually glad I kicked off the docket with watching this one. DiCaprio gives a performance that's very much against the grain of what he does. He's usually very charismatic. This time he's much more emotional in regards of like how he's carrying his demeanor in this one. And because of that, he doesn't always have a lot of dialogue, but he's finding really unique and interesting ways to convey his overall demeanor, which I thought was extremely compelling. And when your director is Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, who continues to amaze me. Joe, I know you've read the book, but I
love the book.
Oh,
yeah.
But I can't speak to that context. The historical accuracy kind of bothers me a little bit, but I also realize that it's Hollywood. Creative liberties are always going to be an issue, and Braveheart is probably the worst offender.
It's also kind of based on like an American folklore, really. He's kind of a legend in that sense.
In a way, but the real story is a little bit more anticlimactic than this. I think it's a very beautiful movie. I think it's very well acted. I think sometimes it gets a little too surreal near the second act, but fortunately it manages to bring it full circle. I thought this was a very well done movie. I leave The Revenant with an A-.
All right, well, Joe, I did not know you read the book, so that'll be interesting to hear sort of that perspective as well. But what did you think of the movie The Revenant?
Well, I guess since to answer your question, I believe in the credits it said based in part by the book, which is a very smart thing to say. No, it's the main story is the same, but it's very different because the book is a lot more dialogue heavy, a lot more conversation, a lot of detail, whereas this one chose to be more kind of based on the emotional power of the actors, and more nuanced, as well as the shots, creating this really mystical atmosphere. And I think that in terms of the main plot, though, it's pretty faithful. It just went a very different direction how it told the story. But yeah, I love the book. This movie definitely uses the landscape very well. I mean, in terms of just like the artistic beauty of the movie, I think is probably the high point. I mean, it's just obviously Iñárritu knows his way around the camera, and just some really beautiful shots, just capturing all the landscape and scenes in very different ways. And just in terms of the realism of the violence and just like the bear attack and the costume set design really makes you feel like you're in this time and place, but it also feels kind of otherworldly and mystical at the same time, like that surreal aspect is. But I mean, in terms of surreal, I think it's about as accessible a surrealistic style as you could probably get. I'd say ambiance is really more what he's going to, as opposed to
I could see it
bizarre.
being very love it or hate it, to be honest with you.
I mean, I could definitely see people like coming away from this movie not enjoying it for some reasons, because it certainly is more about the atmosphere than the heavy plot points. But the acting is still good, and I think the little bit of dialogue that is used is usually used very well, like to make a lot of points. I think there's a lot of strong thematic stuff going on in this basic story. I'll say that I actually think for DiCaprio, this might be like his most daring performance because it's so against the grain of anything else he's ever done before, and I think he does it wonderfully. So, I mean, I think it might be his best performance in that sense, which is why if you're just going to give him anything as like a forgiveness one, just give him this one, because
it makes sense.
It really has taken. If you had expectations about DiCaprio as an actor, like he kind of fits within certain categories of what he does, he's done a whole completely different thing now. So for that alone, give him that. But I think Tom Hardy does a really good job playing this very evil person, but also kind of a complicated person. And Domhnall Gleeson actually did a really good job too. Really good job. I think it was excellent. I loved the cinematography. I thought the directing was great. It's a very well put together movie. I do think though that a lot of those shots to create the atmosphere are kind of reused sometimes, and some of the takes are a bit long. A lot of scenes I felt that you could have snipped a few things there. Like I liked a lot of them, but a lot of them were kind of recycled, and I think told us the same thing, which means that this movie, which already does feel kind of like 2.5 hours, feels even longer. So maybe if they trimmed a few of those shots, I think you wouldn't have lost anything. But other than that, I thought it was a very well-done movie. I'm actually with Justin here. I leave it with an A-.
Okay. Well, Justin, I was opposite of you, actually. This is the last one I watched of all the movies we're going to talk about today. So it's a very fresh perspective for me. Not a whole lot of time to ruminate, but I do think that the movie is too long. You're right, Joe. What is 2.5 hours does feel even longer. We talked about the other week with Hateful Eight, how Tarantino has a way of sort of not making you feel the length of his, even the most lengthy of his films. But this one, to me, was a little too much in that department. I would say you could trim easily 20-25 minutes and not lose anything story-wise.
No.
And for me personally, I think it was the more surrealistic aspects of it that I think could have been trimmed. I think the realism is what is so striking about this movie. And I think Inarritu goes a little bit too far with the artsy stuff, and I think would have served the film better to stick with the more, basic nature of it.
Well, it's one of those things where if he had done that, it wouldn't be the movie we're talking about.
Probably
that kind of mystical feel is sort
okay.
of what separates it from doing the same thing, over and over again.
But I think there is a difference. You guys both sort of mentioned, okay, it's not based entirely on the story. It's a little bit more mystical, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think the more mystical nature of it maybe should be the more...
The dream sequences, maybe? Or?
I was just going to say the more, like, quote-unquote legend or urban legend stuff. Like, stuff that he obviously wouldn't survive in the real world. I mean, there's no way he wouldn't have died of pneumonia being in the water that long and this and that and the other thing. Like, that, to me, you sort of give a pass to because, okay, this is the urban legend of this guy. It's a little bit of a tall tale at this point.
I guess rural legend would be more...
Rural, you're right. It's not really an urban legend. You're right.
And that's right.
That to me was sort of the over-the-top element that we needed. I don't know that we needed all of the surrealism, the dream sequences, the symbolism, all that stuff. But, that being said, the acting obviously is phenomenal. I don't know if it's DiCaprio's best performance, but I do agree with you that, if he were to win an Oscar for this, even if it's really for all of his career, obviously the man deserves an Oscar. If it's for this movie, I'm much more okay with that than certain other films.
Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, I think if he had won for Wolf of Wall Street, I don't think that would have been proper. I do think he's trying something very different here. I think Tom Hardy's great. I tire a little bit of this particular accent that he's used in a couple of films now.
I was going to say, how do you feel about the garble?
Yeah, Bondurant obviously comes to mind from Lawless.
I was thinking the same thing, actually.
Hardy does a lot of things differently in his movies. He did the Russian accent in Child 44, minimal very much in Mad Max. He's done a lot of different
Southern
things.
Accent.
This he's done before, and I liked his performance. Could have done without the accent. I think Gleason was great. Will Poulter was great. The kid from We're the Millers, I thought, had a couple of really, really good dramatic scenes.
Yeah.
So I think, though it's long, the conclusion is great. The last, 20 minutes or so is really solid. It just takes a little long to get there.
A little bit.
I'll leave it with the B+.
Okay.
I also enjoyed about it the minimalist sound. There wasn't a lot of score to this. When it was sort of in drips and drabs. It's a lot of natural sticks breaking and wind and that kind of thing, and I liked that a lot.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Dan, because I kind of had a love-hate relationship with that. Sometimes the sound was exceptional in terms of, hearing all those things, but other times it would be incredibly limited. for some reason, a lot of like dialogue would have bits where the spoken word was incredibly faint, and then there would be others where it's clear as day.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Quite sure what was going on there.
I almost wonder if that was a technical issue at the theater.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell. But the score itself, I thought, was absolutely fantastic.
All 2 notes of it, yeah.
No, I think it was appropriately placed. It's just
I agree with you. The score was beautiful. It was just once again very minimalist.
Yeah.
Dun-dun.
For a 2.5-hour movie,
Dun.
there's not much of it. But it was good what was there, for sure.
It was very good. I thought the scenes with his son were good. I liked those dream sequences. I actually thought they were really good. I mean, there was
those parts I was okay with this.
It ties in. It's just I think they kind of become overkill at times.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
No, and I mean, I actually like a lot of the artistic stuff, but I think that a lot of it could have been cut down, is what I'm saying, because not necessarily the scenes themselves, but literally, like, for instance, like that shot of him, walking on the frozen plains against the mountains.
Right.
You get it. And I mean, holding on to that for a good 20, 30 seconds to get that, you get the impact, but then it goes on twice as long or 3 times long. Like, okay, we get it.
It's unnecessary.
It's a small guy.
Big world.
Wilderness is big. We get it. Cut.
Yeah.
You got to cut? No, you like that shot? Okay, I'll sit here and wait, for it to go to the next one. And then he's crawling.
And Tarantino had a few of those towards the beginning of Hateful Eight. Looking at the Jesus statue.
That was a little artsy.
Etc. But then, once the story starts, he kind of drops that. This was very much throughout the film.
Yeah, I recommend you guys read the book. It was really good.
Yeah, I'm intrigued about it. I never heard of this person. I didn't know of the book until, the preview started and they were saying about it. Is it just called The Revenant?
Yep.
The book? Okay.
Yeah, Story of Revenge.
All right, well, up next we have The Big Short. Joe?
Well, The Big Short is the most recent biographical comedy drama. I won't say it, Dan. And it was directed by, what's the gentleman who did all those Will Ferrell movies?
Adam McKay.
Adam McKay. It's his first more dramatic movie. And it's about the financial crisis of 07-08 that was brought about by the buildup of the housing market and the credit bubble. Caused a lot of people to lose their homes. The film stars a pretty good cast of people. You've got Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, and Brad Pitt. And they play these 4 members of this high world finance who predict the credit and housing bubble collapse and decide to take on the big banks because of their greed and lack of foresight. Now, one thing I really liked about this movie was how it kind of balanced this idea of like a fictional film with a lot of the comedy and drama, but also interspersed it with some documentary aspects. I thought that was kind of cool. It sort of mixed it up in the early parts there, and I like the fact that it really tried to take this complicated subject matter and make it more accessible. And I thought the performances were pretty good. And I thought that the conclusion of the movie definitely has the most weight. But I have to confess something. Something happened in this movie that hasn't happened in a long time. I fell asleep a little bit.
Oh no!
So I mean, that in good conscience, I can't give this movie a super high grade. so I'm trying to figure out what happened here. First of all, I'll say I was really tired that day. But even so, that usually doesn't happen. I think that there's something lacking in this movie in terms of the punch it's trying to have. Like, for instance, the performances are, like, good. I think Christian Bale probably gives the best one because he's Christian Bale and he's trying to do something different. But even this one, I didn't think it was, like, the most overdone, in terms of that. And, for instance, Steve Carell, I think, is, in terms of more dramatic stuff, I've seen him do better work. I think Dan in Real Life was a much better
good movie.
Example of a dramatic performance from him. This one, a lot of it didn't seem quite as genuine.
No, Foxcatcher, of course.
Foxcatcher was great. Ryan Gosling, his character could have been completely axed from the movie because it didn't really serve anything, except for a couple fun intros. Brad Pitt didn't need to be in this movie. He wasn't doing particularly well. I usually like him. It was just, I don't know. So, and there are a couple different stories going on here. I just feel like if they had chose to focus on one, they could have told the whole thing extremely well. What did you guys think about having the celebrity cameos to try and explain hedge funding and whatnot? Because I had very mixed feelings about that.
I'll get to that in my review.
Okay, well,
Same.
All right, well, for me, it was like, I kind of liked the idea, but I think this movie just tries to roll past the explanation so quickly you can't take it all in, because I didn't completely understand everything about it, which maybe is what they're going for, but if you're not going to take the time to really explain it, these celebrity cameos are kind of funny, but I'm not sure how effective they are. So I felt like this movie was trying to do so many different things when there is a really good story here, there is some comedy here, there's some real good drama here, but there's just too much lack of focus and too many different stories. So on the whole, I think it's a decent movie, but it could have been much, much better. I leave it with a B-.
Well, there's definitely some good performances here. I think probably Ryan Gosling in his limited role is the best one. I'm sort of over Christian Bale. Steve Carell is okay, but like you said, I've seen him do better dramatic roles in other films. And Brad Pitt, you're absolutely right. I like him a lot. His character was fine, but he didn't really serve much of a purpose.
No.
Other than just basically be there.
Yeah, and they
all do the same thing.
Well, they could have had Pitt's character maybe in like a scene or two played by anybody.
Exactly.
It didn't necessarily need to be as large of a role, and not even that it was that large, but
it's like,
it's just unnecessary. It's obviously a lot like The Wolf of Wall Street in its execution.
Yeah.
You have a lot of talking to the camera. You have some clever quips here and there, some comedy elements. But it's also like the film we reviewed for a new classic a while ago, Margin Call, in its content. We sort of saw the housing bubble thing. Now, that one was from the Wall Street perspective, a little bit more, I guess. But I don't understand the intricacies of the whole housing market game, and this movie did little to clear that up. Speaking about the celebrity cameos that you talked about, they have Selena Gomez in one, Margot Robbie, and I think it's Anthony Bourdain is in the other one. And that's all fine and good. It sort of was keeping in line with the tone of the film. You had the every so often somebody would like sort of draw something on the screen with their finger and it would appear, So it was sort of that sort of a thing they were going for. But you're right, they go so fast with the explanation, the celebrities do, that it was lost on me. I'm not a news kind of person, but when all this was going on, I'm a big Daily Show fan, and so this topic was covered, every day for months on the Daily Show. I didn't get it then. And that was when it was presented in a comedic, dumbed down type of thing, So some of it goes over my head. I'm a little higher than you, Joe. I'll leave it with a B. I think there were a lot of good ideas here.
Yeah.
But I think it was trying too hard.
Yeah.
In many aspects.
Trying way too hard at too many different things. Like, the thing about it is, each one of these guys' stories on their own were okay, but if you had focused on one of them, you could have told a much more focused story and gotten into more detail about it.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out how
Carell, I would say, is probably the most compelling.
If we were going to focus on his team, I cared about that, but they're literally like a fourth of the movie.
Right.
Know?
Justin, how about for you?
I'll kick this off with a note to Mr. McKay. You can make a documentary, or you can make a drama, but you have to pick one. And clearly, he did not learn his lesson with The Big Short.
Hey, The Nightmare didn't, to be fair. The Nightmare
I
went
don't agree with you,
documentary
gentlemen,
and
with that,
horror.
but anywho, I'm not sure why there's this growing trend of adapting Michael Lewis books into movies, Moneyball being one of the other ones.
I like that one.
I like that movie.
But the film seems to tilt between this character-driven drama with way too many characters, or this playful, cameo-riddled documentary that's very much in McKay's style. I think it's helpful, and a couple of them I was able to keep up with. But I think it does take a little while to put it together. I think a lot of it is because it's so chaotically jumping between these characters. And a lot of them I don't feel like we get to know enough of. Like Carell, we get the most time with. He's a very interesting, very complicated character, and understanding him is very important to how the film plays out. But Christian Bale, they introduce all these different components to him. Most of them you don't ever see again. And I was seriously annoyed by that near the end, given the fact that we spend probably the first 15, 20 minutes with him.
You kind of have to have him in the movie because he kind of the first guy to figure it out.
Yeah, he's fine to be in the movie, but I agree with Justin that they threw a lot at his character that didn't need to be there.
I like the heavy metal stuff.
They could have focused... Yeah, I like the drama.
Yeah.
They could have focused either more on him or less on him. But don't throw in a bunch of people that don't matter.
I know you're still working on your review, Justin. Do you think it would have been better if they had had maybe one focus on one group of characters, like maybe Steve Carell's team, and had
Absolutely.
you know how in certain films, if it's like a grand epic or something, they'll have one character discover something, and they'll have 20 minutes of the movie, and then it jumps into the main movie. Maybe Bale.
It may not have been a bad idea.
Maybe come back to Bale at the end, how he got affected by it in some way. Because I liked his monologue. I thought that was pretty.
Maybe
good.
sort of like Snatch, where it's okay, we're with Jason Statham, then we're with some of the other characters, and we eventually do get back to Jason Statham, but it might be later on.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that kind of annoys me that I found frustrating is, despite the chaotic nature, just about everyone is on their A game. It's just I wish they had something better to flow with it. Somewhere around the second act, it does start sort of coming together a little bit more nicely. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the result is promising and at times very emotional, particularly come the conclusion. But the ride to that point is sometimes a bit of a struggle. I leave The Big Short with a B+.
No, love her.
So it did a lot of things right, I guess.
Like I said, once we get to like around the second half of the movie, it starts flowing a little bit better. But the problem is, I think because of its chaotic nature, it does falter a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's definitely too chaotic.
Yeah.
I could not get quite on board with it.
I'd say so. Maybe that's because we don't have enough time with any of the characters to really know them that well. Because of all the documentary spurts.
I mean, I would have completely nixed the interns.
I'll be honest, that another part of the problem for me was with some of these characters, I mean, I felt like their motivations I didn't really care about. Like the two guys, I mean, they try to kind of give them like this moral boost at the end, like, oh no, so many people could lose their homes. Most of the time, they're kids that have like $30 million and they're trying to get more money. And I'm like, well, I don't really care if you succeed. You're already...
I was going to say, you're basically set.
You know,
I think Margin Call did that a lot better.
Well, yeah, I was going to say with Margin Call, you get to see it a more fair side within Wall Street and see that, you know, some of these people discover it. And I'll be honest, they don't go into too much detail about all of it, but they do show that there were layers and different people understanding and that they weren't all total evil.
Much like Hateful Eight and The Revenant comparison, Margin Call and The Big Short are two very different movies.
It's true.
Big Short is about sort of the build-up to that. Margin Call is more or less dealing with that when it happens.
Yeah, the aftermath.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, both sort of have this, I'd argue, almost sort of Shakespearean tragedy angle to it. Like, this could have been prevented, but all the working pieces that could have done something didn't.
But there's so many pricks that it's hard to
get behind all of them.
It's hard to really care about all of them.
Like
that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Even, like in my opinion, I know that's. I guess it's not like correlating on what would have happened, but you know, if Carell's character had not made the choice that he did, it would have been a more powerful ending. Instead of, unless you're gonna take it and then, you know.
How about the fake out ending? Savage's style.
That was irritating.
Yes, it was.
It was really irritating. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a lot of problems with this one.
Yeah, it wasn't great. All right, well, up next is Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension. This is the 6th and supposedly final chapter in the extremely successful horror franchise, and in it, we finally get to see some of the activity firsthand. It opens with the closing scene from Paranormal Activity 3, shown from a different camera angle, and takes place 25 years later when a family discovers those tapes from the third installment and notices a lot of eerie parallels between the girls in those videos and their own daughter. I think that it was smart for the Ghost Dimension to go from the third film. That's, in my opinion, the best of the series. I think there was a lot of interesting things happening, and it really was sort of building on the story. And then we had all these other movies that didn't really involve much of the lore. The what was the one with the Latino group?
The marked ones?
Was that the marked? Yeah. The marked ones had a couple of things that sort of were callbacks to, like, the second one.
They were just strange. And the first one.
And the first one. But it didn't quite connect right. And then the fourth one, which is technically the 5th movie, but anyway, that was just terrible and didn't really hold any water with any of the other installments, even though it kind of tried. But the reasons that people keep holding the camera get increasingly ridiculous as this movie goes on. Part of the reason that the third one is one of my favorites is the whole motif, and I know, Joe, you've never seen, other than the ones we've covered on the show, you've never seen any of them.
Nope.
But in the third one, the guy actually mounts the camera on like a rotating fan to get the angles or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
And it makes sense.
No, it does.
It's a reason for, while everything's happening, that the camera's still rolling.
It's a silly reason.
These people are watching... First of all, they're videotaping themselves watching the old tapes, which is weird. I don't know when they're going to pull out those and say, oh, remember when we watched these tapes?
It's pretty meta.
And then, you know, when the stuff starts happening at the end, it's really obvious you should put the camera down. So that's kind of annoying. But I do like that we got to see the spirits more clearly here. We got a few decent scares out of it. I didn't really get why this was released in 3D. There's a couple of shots that make it clear that, okay, something was trying to jump out at you. But most of these Paranormal Activity movies are like 80 to 85% watching the cameras just kind of filming and nothing happening, and then like 10 to 15% of actual content. So it seemed like an odd choice for 3D, but whatever, they were trying their best. It's certainly far from the best in the franchise, but it's better than 4 for sure. It's about on par with the marked ones. I leave the Ghost Dimension with a C. Joe?
I found this one pretty boring for the most part. I did like some of the scares, though. I thought some of it was more effective than the marked ones in that sense, because the marked ones, for the most part, I found to be kind of comedic.
A little bit.
Unintentionally, but yeah.
This one, I guess I didn't quite understand the... I understood the connection, I guess, but I didn't know it was from 3.
Yeah.
But okay, that kind of makes a little more sense now in retrospect. I thought it was pretty standard, though, for the most part. I'm really sick of these movies.
Sure.
This type of film. I know I haven't really been
found footage.
as versed in paranormal. Yeah, but found footage, it's like... Well, I think if you could find a creative way to do something with it, which some films do, it's fine. But I think this particular type has just been used to death. Some of the reasons for them having the camera were kind of silly, but I kind of checked my mind out the door, because if you had them put down the camera, you wouldn't have half the movie. I think some of the atmosphere is okay, but the acting was mostly pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
I think you're right about it being there's just so much where nothing happens. It's almost not worth it. But I try to give it a little bit of a doubt. It's not horrible, but it's not that entertaining. I leave this one with a D+.
Okay. Justin?
I feel like the more playful side of the franchise is back, which I did appreciate. I agree with you, Dan. I think the 3D was a not great idea for a last-second decision.
It seemed weird.
It's gimmicky. It's strange. It doesn't feel like Paranormal Activity at all. I get that their big boast was this time you get to see the activity. There were so many better ways to do that didn't involve 3D whatsoever. I do like the fact that it tried to make more of a conscious effort to try and answer some of the questions that other movies had. 3 in particular, giving a little bit more context, even 2 for that matter. I am a firm believer 4 should just be considered non-canon.
Wow.
Mostly because nothing else.
Yeah, it doesn't really relate to anything else.
Not really. It's just bizarre. Even despite the fact that they did try to tie some things up, I still have more questions, which is why I think the way everything wraps up in this one is, for lack of a better word, odd. But I think for being the final chapter, it does enough. And I can give it enough for that. Leave the Ghost Dimension with a C-.
It's big money.
I honestly appreciate that it was so connected with 3. And actually, for that reason, I think for people that have followed this series through, and you're right, it leaves some unanswered questions, but I think for people that have followed this franchise from the beginning and are diehard fans, I do think it does enough to sort of satisfy a fair portion of what's been happening.
What's left of their fandom, but yes.
Yeah, obviously it's, got diminishing returns, and this one, because of their on-demand deal with
probably crumbled.
Certain theaters, only got released in about 1,500 theaters as opposed to 3,000 plus that, the heyday provided.
Right.
But I don't know. The acting was pretty bad. I'll give you that, Joe.
It's pretty rough.
But they're always,
in comparison to the marked ones, though?
Well, the marked ones,
It was not good.
There was energy, at least. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I don't know that the acting was any worse than in the marked ones.
It's about the same.
It begs the question of if it's bad acting or just bad script, which I think with the marked ones it's about a 50-50. My biggest issue with the Ghost Dimension isn't necessarily the acting, it's the how can we tie up this one? Let's have them randomly come to an assumption that sort of ties us up. I think this is just one of those cases of they started out with nothing, they ended up with a franchise, and just sort of were stuck eventually thinking, well, how can we expand this? We've told one generation of the story, we've told a side member of that generation's story, we then went prequel, where else can we go?
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, you tie it up, and I think this one did that moderately. So
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'll leave it with a C. So, Joe, let's hear about the other horror movie.
God.
Let's
this
hear
is gonna be
about
fun.
The Forest.
All right. Well, The Forest is a supernatural horror film directed by Jason Zeta, and starring Game of Thrones cast member Natalie Dormer. She plays a woman who goes to Japan in the legendary Suicide Forest to find her twin sister, who she also plays, obviously. And there's ghosts and stuff, I guess. Man, this movie sucks. I mean, it's so apparent from the get go, and I even her performance is just wow. I mean, I know that the script is just so bad that you can tell that every single person involved is not committed to this. They're just doing it to collect a quick buck. It's just uninteresting, so melodramatic, and yet it's just so stifled at the same time. There's nobody is really giving any range to anything. It's not scary. It's a waste of time. It's virtually impossible to pay attention because everybody in this movie seems like they're bored. Everyone involved with it seems like they're bored with what they're doing, and I'm like, there's something interesting in there somewhere, but if you're not gonna, it's like if people think they can just put this general idea up there and they can make a horror movie without caring about it, I mean, well, then you're gonna get a product where the audience is gonna care about it. So, I mean, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Just give you a treat or something? I'm sorry, this is just impossible to watch, so it's an F. Sorry, there's nothing. There's I can't even say there's nothing bad. There's just nothing here.
No.
Not even there's nothing bad. It's not there's anything bad or good. It's a vacuous nothing. And this movie, and it's a new one for me. It's a new one. It's a void. It's a void of no commitment or anything. So if you guys could find anything good, I'd be surprised because I just couldn't even do it.
No, I definitely disagree. You said there's no bad, there's no good. No, it's all bad.
Okay.
There's tons of bad. None of it makes any sense.
No.
You're right. The acting is horrible. Now, I don't watch Game of Thrones. The only thing I know this girl from is the Hunger Games Mockingjay films, which they don't really give her much to do. She's okay in those.
Yeah.
But not certainly, popping out at the screen and
No.
oh, wow, she's great.
No.
But the worst part, the biggest crisis of this film is that it's actually a great horror setting.
Yeah.
The Suicide Forest, which exists, and it's a great idea to set a horror film there. But this is not the one. Everyone's horrible. You're right. My favorite part of the movie is when she decides, you know what, I'm not going to head back. They had this guide take them in the forest, her and this reporter guy. Yeah. I'm going to set up camp here. I found my sister's tent. We're going to wait for her. Jess, we're calling her name. And then the guy says, oh, you know what, I'll wait with you. No big deal. We'll look for her together. Then they just sit down and hang out. They stop looking for her immediately. If you're really that worried about Jess that you refuse to leave the forest, how about you call her name a couple more times?
It'd be nice if the characters were committed. The actors are
no
committed.
No one cares.
No, within the plot, behind the set, nobody cares.
No.
There's nothing. There's no motivation, man. No motivation.
These things happen that we're supposed to assume are her going crazy because the forest is making her crazy. Yeah. But, they're not done very well, so you don't really know whether she is going crazy, and it's never really explained some of the things. This time of year we do tons of last year's releases. The Oscar releases start rolling out, catching up on things that were released around Christmas and New Year's. So this is technically the first movie of 2016, and I hate to do it, but I fail it too. It's awful.
Sucks.
Justin? Let's hear it. 3 in a row?
Maybe find some positive. You're the last one. The last one.
I fought tooth and nail and then just realized this just wasn't happening.
I did too, Justin. I was like, I can't fail the first movie of the year, but there's no way around it.
Yeah. The latest Game of Thrones cast member trying to evade typecasting and failing miserably.
What was the last one? I forget. We just talked about it. Was it Last Witch Hunter or something? What?
No. Well, actually, yeah.
Wasn't there somebody in Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
The
Last
girl,
Witch Hunter.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That's her.
The following was one I watched on my own. Don't worry, you'll never hear about it again. In all fairness, gentlemen, I could talk all day about the revenge of Hollywood whitewashing, making supernatural entities out of real-world events, such as the growing suicide problem in Japan, which is a big deal, and they make basically light of it. I promise listeners, this is not the gallows part 2.
Yeah, this is a real thing.
This is a legit thing, and it's and it's huge. And I think there was a lot they could have done with that, not only in terms of, if you want to make it a horror film, at least find a way to tie in the actual problem and find interesting ways to handle that.
Or make it scary.
Or make it scary.
Or make anyone
even more
try
importantly.
or
Or
care
make it
or
interesting.
anything.
But honestly, that would entail putting far more of an effort into this review than the filmmakers did with a 96-minute movie.
Ugh.
And with that, I have nothing more to say. This is an F.
All right. Well, up next is The Ridiculous Six. This is a Netflix exclusive Western comedy, and in it, Adam Sandler plays White Knife, an outlaw who was raised by Native Americans. He discovers that he has 5 half-brothers, played by Terry Crews, Jorge Garcia, Taylor Lautner, Rob Schneider, and Luke Wilson, and together the 6 men go on a mission to find their deadbeat dad, played by Nick Nolte. As I mentioned earlier in the show, this is the most watched film thus far in Netflix history. Not that they have a huge slate so far, but one that we reviewed very favorably late last year was Beasts of No Nation. But this is getting, a bunch of press. It had controversy going into it, which we talked about last year. And it's Adam Sandler, who people really seem to like. This movie is quite bad. I don't think it's quite as awful as some of his films, but it's very, very bad. There's a lot of regulars of Sandler movies in here. David Spade shows up, John Lovitz, Buscemi is in it, of course.
Turturro.
Yeah, Turturro is here. The only ones really that aren't are Henry Winkler and Kevin James. They're the two I didn't see in this, but I'm unsure how nobody involved asked, why isn't this funny, or why doesn't this pop? Here's the good news, that on a very basic level, I think the story is okay. It's not interesting necessarily, but I think it's all right. I thought Terry Crews was really trying here, and surprisingly, this will be like a knife in Justin's ear, but I actually thought Taylor Lautner was really trying. I thought his accent was all right. The third nipple thing got old real quick, but I thought some of his other bits were okay. I sort of liked the whole hanging thing. I leave The Ridiculous Six with a D. It's not quite F-worthy for me, but we'll see what you guys thought of it. Justin, let's go to you.
Well, for a while I've had the theory that Sandler is deliberately making garbage as sort of a subtle cry for help to get his fans to sort of make him make better movies. However, if that is truly the case with The Ridiculous Six, that does not evade the fact that it is easily, quite possibly, the most painful addition to his trash-ridden resume since the likes of That's My Boy. Racist, sexist, unbelievably stupid, offensive in nearly every possible way. I found myself cringing on more than a couple occasions. Dan, to answer your question on why didn't anybody ever ask why isn't this funny, I think the short answer is it's another case of, well, the cast was having so much fun they didn't really care. And
it's possible. They do that with the grown-ups films. I've always said that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can tell that they were having a camaraderie probably offset, but it's just a miserable cinematic experience. Ironically enough, though, Dan, the only time I came even remotely close to laughing was that hanging scene.
I thought it was funny.
It was mildly amusing, and then it dies almost instantly.
Well, yeah.
This one is a very, very easy F.
All right, Joe?
Sometimes you've got certain films that, they try to be one thing, and I like for me it was like Krampus, where I thought the comedy might have been a little lacking, but the more dramatic horror elements worked pretty well for me. So I could see a positive there. This one is a comedy, obviously, but most Sandler films are. Happy Madison Productions, but I didn't laugh once. So
that's a problem.
That's definitely a problem. But if there was maybe a dramatic component that I thought was really good or it held together pretty well, I guess you're right. The story's okay.
Yeah, it's basic.
It's basic, but wasn't interesting or entertaining. Not for me. Yeah, this one was pretty painful to get through. I just wish that some of the jokes had landed, and even if they would have, it wouldn't have saved it for me though.
It's also entirely too long.
It was a little long, yeah.
A bit lengthy too. I think if it had been 90 minutes, that might have made it a little more bearable. But this is a very easy F for me too. Not a fun watching experience for me.
So an induction into your bottom 10 of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about failing it, but I don't know. I got a couple of chuckles out of it. I think it's better than... Like, what's probably the... I mean, Chuck and Larry, to me, is the worst.
I've never seen its entirety, so I'll let you have that.
It's real bad, and as a gay person, quite offensive.
Oh, yeah, that's where the gamer...
But, I don't know. Zohan was also really awful.
Zohan was pretty bad.
Yeah. I don't know. My question is, how does he continue to get the likes of an Al Pacino or a Nick Nolte to be in his films? I know he's got his regulars, but like Al Pacino's not one of his regulars. Yet he signed on for Jack and Jill.
He's got a rep, and people like him.
He's a nice guy.
People like him, I guess.
Also, bear in mind, Al Pacino also at one point signed on for Geely, so take that for what
I
it's
didn't
worth.
know he was in Geely.
He was. Well, I think certain actors get to a point where they don't really care anymore, like De Niro.
They just want to be in things like Dustin Hoffman.
Or something.
Yeah, De Niro's been in some bad things.
Like you get to a point where it doesn't really matter for you. I mean, if you've done enough wins, you could probably they don't really care. They don't have to care. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't do that.
Why not?
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like you want to care about, I don't know, something.
Well, then you could have somebody like, I don't know.
Like Luke Wilson. I get why he doesn't care. He's Luke Wilson.
Yeah. He is.
Yeah.
But Nick Nolte? I feel like he's done some decent work.
Ideally speaking, you're right. I think that a lot of these actors would want to, they get to a certain standard. They want to try to aim for projects they really like. Maybe it's possible that they wanted to take a chance at something. Maybe Al Pacino was like, you know what? I don't do these types of comedies very often. Let's see what I can add to it. And I believe you thought he was like the best part.
He was really probably the only halfway decent part of Jack and Jill.
There you go. He sort of tried to save it. So that's his contribution. I mean, it's better than an actor going in and not caring at all, right? He could have just slept the whole time, which some actors do.
I mean,
to collect a paycheck or something. I mean, if they need it desperately, I don't know. Like,
God, this movie is bad.
That's
really,
like
really
think about that, Dan. It's
You're right. I gave Jack and Jill a D, and the Al Pacino parts of Jack and Jill were funny. Well, ish.
ish.
God, all right. I'll fail ridiculous 6.
No one's gonna fight you on
Yeah,
it.
I know.
I was gonna say this.
I was trying to find something positive in this movie.
Look, I was like I would have been kind of okay with it if it hadn't been like opening up with.
His character is freaking called White Knife.
Honestly, I was like trying to go. That was the point where I'm like, really?
Did it do the TP line? And I missed it?
I don't believe so.
Okay, they must have cut that out after the controversy.
Yikes.
Yeah, what was it? I want you to go PP in my TP or something?
I want to put my PP in your TP.
Oh, that's what it is. I want to put my PP in your TP.
You know what? If they had kept that in, I actually...
Maybe we would have gone D-minus.
That might have got a chuckle from me. That's not... if Adam Sandler said, could have put my PP in your TP? All right, fine.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, though, Dan, because all the other things that they were like firing off on made it in.
Yeah, the beaver breath line made it in.
Where's No Bra also.
Yeah, that was really stupid.
It was...
There,
the whole movie is inherently stupid.
No, all right. Yeah, you're right.
It's pretty dumb.
All right, well, let's move on. We have a movie called Phoenix, and Justin recently put that in his top 20, so I imagine this will be better received than Ridiculous 6. Justin, let's hear about Phoenix.
Nina Hoss plays Nellie, a survivor of the Holocaust who underwent facial reconstruction after a bullet wound, desperately seeking out her husband, Johnny, played by Ronald Zerfeld, who may have betrayed her to the Nazis. Although it is deemed a futile task by her peers, Nellie does successfully manage to find Johnny, who doesn't recognize her, and to make matters even worse, recruits her to impersonate Nellie in order to acquire her inheritance. Now, as I mentioned when we did the best of, this combines a lot of different things I like. It's nostalgic, but it also has some really interesting storytelling. I almost instantly got attached to these characters and watching how they're going to unfold. And I think the bold attempt to stick film noir in a period piece like this, not necessarily being like the gritty streets of New York or something like that, really adds an interesting angle. And I think the ultimate result is this sort of strange cocktail of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, Casablanca, and maybe even traces of, dare I say, The Raider, that I really thought worked in this strange but also very compelling way. I thought The characters were interesting and complicated. And even though the ending kind of took a little bit for me to contemplate and think about what exactly they were trying to go for, I thoroughly thought it complemented the storyline. I think this is a fantastic foreign film. I leave Phoenix with an A+.
All right, Joe?
Well, I think you picked a pretty good one. I actually found myself pretty interested in these characters as well. I really liked their plight. I liked their relationship a lot. I thought the dialogue was pretty good. I'm not sure if all the noir aspects worked quite as well for me, but I did like the fact the film was trying a lot of different things. I thought some of the shots were pretty good. Some of it felt a little standard, but I think the story flowed well. I definitely like what you say about the more nostalgic aspects of some of like the more classic films. It's almost like kind of a swan song to them to an extent, which I thought was kind of nice.
But also sort of standing on its own ground in that regard.
Yeah, it's trying to bring a new spin to some old ideas, which is good. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty well done movie. I enjoyed it. I leave it with an A-.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this was a good choice, Justin. It's subtle, it's deliberate. It's this great mystery drama that, you're right, is a lot of different things. It's a good throwback to classics from the era it takes place in, the 40s and the 50s. I think there's sharp writing here. I think there's solid performances. There's a couple of plot holes that pull it down from perfection, but I think with the type of film that it's trying to be, that it's okay. I sort of dismiss that as, okay, well, they're making sort of a noir-esque film. Not everything always has to be so true to life. Yeah, not everything has to be airtight. You're right. Hitchcock certainly didn't have every movie be completely believable 100%.
True.
So in that regard, I was sort of okay with it. I'm with Joe. I leave it with an A-.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. In fact, I think it's the best foreign film of 2015.
Wow.
Or
okay.
2015? Or 2014?
Well, one of those weird cases where if you check IMDb, it's going to say 2014, but if you check Box Office Mojo, it's going to be 2015.
Yeah, like it could have been submitted for this year's Oscars.
Yeah, this was a...
it wasn't, but...
It wasn't. No, this was a very... I almost missed this one because I had it on my watch list, and I'd say like a week or two before we did the Best Of show, I started running the numbers of movies that failed the 100 theater rule, and this one hit like 150s, and one of my...
This went to 150 theaters?
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
And
it's impressive.
And I remember that one of my colleagues recommended it to me. It played at Midtown for a week, so I was like, I gotta watch this movie.
Oh, it did? Boy, we missed it completely. I don't even remember hearing about it.
Yeah, so...
Okay.
Found it on Instant, watched it, and was like, I need to put this in my list.
Well, that is one of the great things of Netflix, is that they are, they do get to bring a lot of like foreign films and documentaries to a wider audience that doesn't live in a town with an art house theater, or a lot of these don't go to Redbox, for example. So if they don't want to plunk down the $20 to buy it and see if they like it,
I'll never know.
They can watch it on there. And yeah, I like that Netflix does that. But boy, I don't know how this escaped us, because if it was played locally,
that is kind of weird.
We never even talked about it.
Though with that theater, who knows?
But I mean, it was also...
Well, that's true.
It was also summer where we're hitting so many movies that...
Yeah.
True, but usually when they get something, we at least mention it in the conversation.
That's
we
fair.
didn't do Meet the Patels either, but at least I knew it existed.
there.
It was
there.
swimming around, yeah.
Well, up next we have another one from Justin's list, one that I definitely wanted to see when it premiered on HBO a while back, and that is Going Clear, Scientology and the Prison of Belief. Joe?
Now, Going Clear is a documentary which basically deconstructs the Church of Scientology's claims as presented as kind of a history of the whole religion, and focusing some information on its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, and it examines how the celebrities interact with the church and highlights many stories from a lot of ex-members, and also explores the abuse and exploitation that is often being described as having been seen or experienced by these people that were former members. And I have to say that it's a very, very interesting documentary and very haunting, and I was like hooked immediately. Like, it kind of has this thriller sense automatically cutting in with this weird device that's used along with some of the first kind of examinations, what people are saying, and you get to hear a lot of different perspectives, and it's so haunting how much is true to these people's experiences in terms of what they're saying. Like you really feel that, and it's also very well shot for a documentary too. Like I thought that it was just very crisp in that sense. I thought it moves very well, and it covers a lot of ground, and really it was very revealing and fascinating for me. And I thought it was really quite a surprise. So I'd have to just give it an A+ because it's amazing.
All right, wow. Yeah. Rare for a documentary.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. All right, Justin?
Is Scientology a religion or a cult?
Both.
I won't take sides, mostly because I don't want to get sued. But if the arguments provided in this movie hold any weight, signs quite possibly point to the latter. Now, the personal commentaries provided by the film illustrate the dark sides of, as the title suggests, going clear. One of the many twisted terminologies used.
But don't we all want to get clear, Justin? Isn't that the goal?
Well, according to John Travolta, yeah, and everything is, every possible setback is just an inhibition that we can have shocked out of us, but...
Guess so.
But also a really compelling look into the mysterious and, frankly, rather suspicious inner workings of Scientology in general. It's definitely not without a motive, and certainly loaded, but like I said, if any of these arguments hold weight, and I absolutely think they do, Going Clear goes more than out of its way to justify them. I thought this was a fantastic documentary. Maybe a little bit too long, but I'm with you, Joe, in regards to the hooked aspect of it. I leave this one with an A-.
Why?
Uh-oh.
Like I said...
I just want to know the negatives. He didn't really mention any.
You said loaded, so I guess maybe a little biased for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a smear campaign, and like I said, I think it's justified, but you can also tell they've definitely got an axe to grind.
All right. Well, that is fair, and I agree. I think most documentaries about a subject as polarizing as this do have a very strong stance one way or the other. But I've been both fascinated and disgusted by the goings-on of Scientology for years. I've looked into various aspects of it, and I find this documentary to be pretty much in line with my way of thinking. Certainly. Facts kind of are facts when they're talking about the tax returns and, this, that, and the other thing.
Military records and stuff.
Military records. And, there's spin and then there's...
Facts.
These are the facts. Now, obviously, the higher-ups went after this documentary very hard.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Which only, to me... kind of feeds the notion that these are the facts and that, they don't want any of this information getting out because it's messed up.
I mean, when you're looking
really,
at, like,
really
the actual documents from, like, 1946 or whatever, I mean, that you can't really dispute that.
No. and the whole campaign to, classify it as an actual religion to get the tax exempt and then, worrying about this and that and the other thing. And obviously, I love Tom Cruise. I think he's a great actor. But we've all sort of, seen the remnants of this and heard either from Katie Holmes or from Nicole Kidman, his ex-wives, about various aspects. I've been following the whole Leah Remini thing. She sort of ousted herself from Scientology after this film was made, but she's, got a big book out now about this whole thing and basically saying the same things. They told her to... cut ties with her entire family and this and that. Everything kind of lines up with what this documentary says. So I can't really argue with it. I do agree that because of its subject matter, it does have to be kind of loaded.
The basics, I mean, like a lot of, beliefs, religion, I mean, there's good stuff in Scientology. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like every single thing, like the goals that it's trying to purport aren't all completely bad. But they're
vague, but
they're a little vague. But I mean, like, there's some good stuff there, and a lot of these people thought they were being helped and helping, but obviously there's a lot of bad stuff in there, and
and I think they interviewed the right people. I mean, obviously Paul Haggis is a huge celebrity in terms of ex-Scientologists, but the people that I've never heard of that they interview, I think. Were also very telling, with their own personal stories, and I think maybe the most telling sentence or two of the whole documentary is when the guy says, it's towards the end, where he says, look, if you ask, a Catholic or a Jew or a Buddhist, what their religion believes, what the temples are, they can tell you in a couple of sentences, but Scientology, you have to wait 7 years before they even tell you if you are in it,
It's kind of weird.
And I think that kind of sentence
Speaks volumes.
Just speaks volumes, about this whole documentary, really.
Yeah.
Sort of, and they placed it right because it sort of does put kind of a pin on it. They placed it right towards the end. I think the documentary is structured very well. Like I said, I think they interview the right people, and they make it clear that they tried to interview, Cruz and Travolta and some of the higher ups.
Nobody would play ball.
Nobody would play ball, and the one point they say like, oh, Cruz's lawyer, denies that this ever happened, whatever. Which
of course he would.
It's fine.
The lawyer does,
But that proves that they reached out, they got a comment, and they are technically showing both sides.
They're trying to.
They're attempting to. So yeah, I thought it was just a great movie. All right, so now that the Oscar nominations are out and the award season is in full swing, we have our annual list of the top 5 Oscar snubs for each of us every year. There's some actors, actresses, pictures that don't get enough love, or any love sometimes, from the Oscars. So we're going to reveal our top 5 and who or what we would kick out of that particular category to make room for our choice. Joe, we're going to start with you. What is your number 5?
Well, my number 5 would actually be End of the Tour for screenplay. I think that I was thinking originally about the actors, but on the whole, I just really liked the way this story flowed. I thought it was very good in that sense. So, who would be some of the nominations for me? So I don't.
And that would be for original screenplay, I guess, right? Or
correct.
is it based on something?
I believe it's original from what I saw on the.
I don't think it's a book.
Yeah, it's based on the guy's experience.
But
I think that's original screenplay.
It's listed as original.
Yeah. Well, in that category, that's got Bridge of Spies, Ex Machina, Inside Out, Spotlight, and Straight Outta Compton. So definitely some good ones.
Some really good ones.
But who do you think you'd kick out for that?
Probably, actually, the first one mentioned.
Bridge of Spies.
Bridge of Spies, I thought it was a very good movie, but in terms of the script itself, I don't know how much it was in terms of its daring nature.
Okay.
My number 4 was, forgive me, Rick Famuyiwa. He directed Dope. I thought it was a really, really well-directed movie. I liked the way the whole thing came together in terms of the project. This one's not being talked about at all, but really, really excellent direction from this one. Who would I kick off for that, Dan?
Well, it's an interesting selection for Best Director. You've got Adam McKay for The Big Short, George Miller, obviously Mad Max,
of course,
Alejandro Inarritu for The Revenant, Lenny Abramson for Room, and Tom McCarthy, again, Spotlight.
Oh, that's really easy, Dan. Adam McKay's, Big Short, I did not like it all, so
okay.
let's cut that off.
Sure.
All right, my number 3 would actually be Michael B. Jordan from Creed. Really excellent performance, once again, from him. Another film I think was kind of overwritten as well. I know you're pointing at, Dan, but it hurts. It really hurts. But I'd have to kick off Matt Damon because he's still Matt Damon, and it's awesome.
Doing Damon-y things.
He's awesome. He's awesome, Damon. But it's not a huge stretch for him. You were trying to hope I'd kick off Redmayne. Is that what it was?
Actually, Fassbender, but
I liked Fassbender in that.
He does give a great performance.
Yeah, but the movie might have had problems, but I liked it with that. My number 2 is Hateful Eight for Best Picture, because I was really surprised this one wasn't nominated. It's Tarantino. I really liked it, obviously.
For Best Picture, we don't have to kick anything off because there was actually 2 empty slots.
There were?
They can match up to they can have up to 10 Best Pictures. This year, there's only 8.
Oh, though.
Yeah, I have a Best Picture nominee on mine that I don't kick anything off.
Well,
on, so.
I still kick off Big Short though, because I really don't.
Don't Captain Phillips this.
No,
we're never gonna
no,
get the end of
no,
it.
Yeah, really.
I really don't get it. Should I just go to number 1 or wait?
Let's do all 5 of them. That's fine.
All right. Well, my number 1, I think Justin will like this, is Alicia Vikander from Ex Machina. I mean, come on, brilliant performance, one of many she's given.
You can only nominate Vikander for so many things, though.
I know, and I know that it's gotten some other nominations, but I did not see Charlotte Rampling in 45 years, so I don't know about her. But guess I'd have to kick off Jennifer Lawrence for Joy because it was good, but honestly, not the best performance I've seen her give.
Okay. Well, interesting list as per usual, Joe.
Try.
Well, I have an honorable mention.
Good.
And it's because the Best Actor category, I think, is great this year. Fassbender, for me, is the weakest of the bunch. However, I don't know that... I mean, he was obviously the best part of the Steve Jobs movie.
Right.
I'm saddened that Will Smith and Johnny Depp both did not get nominations for Best Actor. But
I can see that.
To be honest, I don't know that I would kick anybody off the list for them.
Okay.
So I'll just leave that as an honorable mention. My number 5 is a Best Actress nomination, and that is Emily Blunt for Sicario. And because I have not seen 45 Years either with Charlotte Rampling, I am, believe it or not, also going to kick off Jennifer Lawrence.
Sad.
I think she's the glue that holds Joey together, but she has been nominated the last 3 years, and rightfully so. She's won for Silver Linings Playbook, so I would, Emily Blunt's been doing a great job in many, many movies for years, so I'd love to see that. My number 4 is in the supporting actress category, which I think is far too crowded as it is. I think you could actually put Vikander in there for Ex Machina, even though she's already up for Danish Girl. You could put her in twice, kick Rachel McAdams out. But I am kicking out Kate Winslet, actually, for Steve Jobs. Oh. She may win because she's Kate Winslet. She won the Golden Globe. But she was my least favorite performer in Steve Jobs. The accent was all over the place. I would give it to Elizabeth Banks for Love and Mercy.
Good choice.
I thought everybody really did a great job. But again, the acting categories for the men is pretty tight this year, so I would give Elizabeth Banks the nod there. Number 3 would be Best Director. Ridley Scott, believe it or not, for The Martian.
Whoa.
I love this movie. And Adam McKay, I agree, is the one to go.
Come on.
Yeah. Number 2 is a Best Picture nominee, and that is Carol, which we'll be talking about on next week's show. But I thought this was an excellent film, and I was surprised that it did get some love in the acting categories for both actors and supporting, and got a screenplay nomination as well, but no Best Picture. So that was surprising, since they did have a couple extra slots. But yes, Joe, I suppose I would probably kick off The Big Short as well if we were kicking things off for Best Picture.
It's a little surprising, yeah.
But my number 1 is Jacob Tremblay for supporting actor. He is the little boy in Room. This was my number 2 movie of the year, and he is at the center of it. You can't nominate this movie for Best Picture and Best Director and all of these other things that it did get nominated for without this kid giving a great performance. Mm-hmm. And I would easily kick off Christian Bale in The Big Short for that. Justin?
I'm actually fairly okay with the Best Picture standings right now. I admit Big Short had some problems, but I think it's okay with being where it is. My number 5 is Maurice Alberti, Best Cinematography for Creed. I thought she did a phenomenal job of really bringing the Philadelphia culture to life, really complimenting the whole training regime. It feels like a Rocky movie, but also a Next Generation story, and both really complimenting the two, and I think it's largely to the way she shot the film. Who would I kick out? Roger Deakins' Sicario. Really, when I look at the list, it's just... It's sort of like last year with Bradley Cooper for American Sniper. Great, good. And very much the odd one out there. My number 4 is for Best Original Song, It's My Turn Now from Dope. Really just encapsulates everything about this movie in about 3.5 minutes. Being a commentary on culture, being a commentary on stereotypes, being a commentary on geekdom in general, and really just really catchy, really thought-provoking song. Listened to it many times after I saw the film. What would I kick out? Probably the easiest pick on this entire list. Writings on the Wall from Spectre. Ooh. This is an unbelievably stupid nomination.
I actually thought you were going to go 50 Shades, and I was going to be very disappointed, because that is a great song regardless of the movie.
I'm actually okay with Earned It, believe it or not.
And I personally, I would have nominated Ellie Goulding, Love Me Like You Do, but all right.
But
yes, the Sam Smith song is not good.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good choice.
It's almost universally despised. Why is this on the list? My number 3 is Charlize Theron, Mad Max Fury Road for Best Actress. I mean, we all came in expecting a Mad Max movie. We got very much a Furiosa story, and I like to believe the majority of the population is actually okay with that. We got a feminist action movie, and I think it was all the better for it. And I'll be honest, if there is a spin-off or if there's any future for Mad Max in general, I would have no problem if they took that direction. Mm-hmm. Who would I kick out? Very much for the same reason with Roger Deakins, Jennifer Lawrence, Joy.
Yeah.
I mean, Silver Linings Playbook, A+, American Hustle, probably like A- performance. Joy, she gives another good performance, but it's not up to the snuff with everybody else. My number 2, Idris Elba, Beasts of No Nation for Best Supporting Actor. Trying to find the right way to phrase this.
Academy doesn't
He's
care about
black,
Netflix.
Yeah.
There's a couple ways to
black,
go.
And
black.
There's no white. There's no blacks.
No white person in the movie. So
no, I mean, the Academy's not racist, they just do dumb things. And this is another one of those cases. I think in the case of Beasts of No Nation, it can be blamed primarily on the fact that I think it was a Netflix movie. The majority of theater chains didn't run it because of that reason, and obviously some of those individuals are probably in the Academy as well. So it was,
which is exactly what I said when we had that conversation. I really didn't think it was going to get nominated because of the Netflix connection.
And I think that's a crying shame because he gave a phenomenal performance. Who would I kick out? Without question, Christian Bale, Big Short. What he does in this is good. The problem is just McKay gives him absolutely nothing to do.
Yeah.
Drums.
Of all 10 of the acting, or of all 20 acting nominees, he's the worst.
It's like, why is he here?
Yeah.
But my number one, Ridley Scott, The Martian for Best Director. I mean,
the only repeat on anybody's list.
Say what you will about Exodus or some of his other lesser directorial efforts from recent years, but I mean, The Martian was the full package. It was funny, it was intense, it was all sorts of things, and yeah, I think it's ridiculous that he has yet to win this, and I think it's a crying shame that he was ignored this year for that. Who would I kick out? Adam McKay, The Big Short.
Yes, as we all did.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good choice.
All right, yeah, good list all around, and we'll see what happens in a couple weeks when the Oscars hit. Finally, we have our one old film for this week's show. Now, the reason we're doing that, there's no A to Z this week for the Oscars because we're up to the Before series for the Oscar A to Z, and we'll be doing a mini-sode of all three, the entire trilogy, Before Sunrise, is that one?
Yep.
First? And then Before Sunset, and then Before Midnight. So that will be on a different show in a mini-sode, but right now, it's my pick for Guilty Pleasure, and that is Dirty Work. It's a 1998 comedy in which Mitch and Sam, played by Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, respectively, are out of work and need to raise $50,000 fast for a new heart for Sam's father, played by veteran actor Jack Warden, who also turns out to be Mitch's father as well. So the pair decides to capitalize on the only thing they know how to do and open up their own revenge-for-hire business. Chevy Chase co-stars as the heart surgeon, and Chris Farley has a role as Mitch's friend from the bar. Now, much like Justin's Guilty Pleasure pick last year, Rocket Man, I think whether you like Dirty Work is going to depend a great deal on how you feel about McDonald and his brand of humor. He is a very love it or hate it type of comedian, much like Harland Williams is in Rocket Man. I think Dirty Work is definitely dumb, and it sort of plays out like vignettes strung together by this basic plot. But I think it's extremely funny. I've always been a fan of McDonald from his SNL days and, now doing stand-up, and he had a sitcom I enjoyed. Now, Chris Farley I never really found funny. I think his parts are the worst in the film. I know a lot of people love Chris Farley. To be honest, I don't get it. I never really understood the fascination. I'm sure he was a very nice guy.
It's pretty easy then.
Yeah, he's fat. I get it.
Fair. It's Fat Man is Fat.
Fat Man is fat. Fat Man is Beverly Hills Ninja. I got it.
Yeah, that's what happened. See,
I had to bring that up.
Joke writes itself, man.
And to be fair, I've never seen Tommy Boy.
What?
That's
But I
like,
saw Black Sheep, and it was horrible, so I never wanted to see Tommy Boy.
Oh, okay.
So if that holds any weight. I think the romance subplot is sort of hit or miss. It's very shoehorned in. It makes sense with the plot, though, I guess. I'll give them that. But for me, Dirty Work is a B. Joe?
No. I think that this one is one where I guess the type of comedy worked for me most of the time. Not all the time. Some of the jokes I thought didn't work very well, or they were just kind of unfunny. But then there were other jokes that started off as unfunny and got better.
Like the fish.
The fish was one. I did the fish. That was probably the funniest part, which I really didn't think was going to work because it was just totally reactionary and it was very minimalist. But it was kind of brilliant, though. It was brilliant, and I mean, like that was really great.
I think the movie takes a couple of left field turns like that work.
Well, but one
I feel like if it wasn't for the escalation, it wouldn't have hit as well.
But yeah, you're right. Because like if it started like the first couple like moments you're listening to, it's not that funny, but it just keeps going and escalating, and it's just the whole other like scene of a movie's happening. It did get funnier, and it got hilarious by the end. So it's kind of one of those things that patience does work sometimes for a joke, if the punchline's good enough. And another one that kind of surprised me. There's a gag. I think it's used 3 times. The first time with the homeless guy, where he's like confessing and giving. The first time that happened, they did that. I'm like, but the second and third time it came back, it actually got funnier because at least they came back to him.
Right.
You know, so I could forgive the first time. You know, and
it was made into a running gag.
He was incorporated back in, so that was good. I thought the story was basic. It's okay. It's incredibly dumb, though. It is incredibly dumb, which doesn't always work for me, but I think it's aware of that at least. Mm-hmm. It was mostly kind of funny. I live with a B-.
Okay. Justin?
Now we know why Bob Saget is not known for his directing prowess.
Yeah, you should have mentioned, right, Bob Saget,
in,
I guess, his directing debut. I didn't look that up, but I have to imagine.
Here's where I got to give the movie some points. It is much, much funnier than it has any business being.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And the SNL cameos are great. I thought Adam Sandler as the devil was a scream.
That was good.
Wow, he was good once. Crazy.
I know.
In the 90s, he really was.
Yeah, and then something happened. We're not quite sure what. But the general concept ends up feeling like a bloated sketch, and I think the fact that it's an incredibly short film kind of hurts it in that regard. Because we have these build-ups for a couple of the jokes, but then we'll sort of rush things, and by the end it just sort of like ends almost abruptly. Like, okay, we got to get to Act 3, so here's Act 3, and here's a real quick epilogue that we could have probably stretched to about 5-10 minutes, but instead feels we cover in 2, and it just feels really, really rushed. There's some great gags in here. The fish thing was great, but
Chevy Chase was good.
He actually was.
Chevy Chase.
Ooh, Justin didn't like him.
That was pretty good.
There were aspects of his bits that I liked. The Rocky 3 thing is hilarious. But
oh yeah,
that was a good one. A lot of quotable jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very quotable jokes, but just because they're quotable does not mean that they're great for comedies. But
well,
for me,
I would disagree with that.
I think for this one, most of the ones we like to be quoted were good.
I think if you're going to quote a comedy, that means it's doing
something for
job.
You.
But I think overall this was a good choice for a guilty pleasure, but I think for me personally it was just a bit of a mixed bag. I leave this one with a C.
Okay. That's actually higher than I thought it would be. I wasn't quite sure how you were going to be with McDonald, because I know you're not, real familiar with him.
I'm not.
Well, I don't know that, but I assumed.
No,
just knowing your
that's
your
a safe
comedy,
assumption.
yeah.
I mean, it's not like
repertoire.
Norm Macdonald is a dollar a dozen.
No, he's not really a household name.
But I think he's sort of in that Jason Sudeikis camp where I just don't think he's a good leading man, but I think he could be a great supporting character.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm trying to think if he hasn't really supported much. I mean, well, you've seen Billy Madison. He was one of the friends by the pool in Billy Madison.
I could see, yeah.
Other than that, I can't think of too much that he's supported in. He had his sitcom that ran maybe 3 years, had this movie. Other than that, it's been mostly stand-up. He had a show on Comedy Central briefly, but yeah, acting-wise, he hasn't really done too much.
I gotta ask, is his voice like part of his shtick?
His pentameter is part of the shtick. I
okay.
mean, his voice is his voice, but
I guess that was where I was trying to go with that.
Yeah, I mean,
sort of like the Gilbert Gottfried thing.
Yeah, it's very like dry. Like he was on the Bob Saget roast actually.
Okay.
And he was very, very funny because he went up and instead of like doing roast jokes, he just did sort of like old vaudevillian, like gotcha jokes from the 20s.
No.
Yeah, that's sort of his shtick, you could say.
Okay.
Like the note to self thing, he did that on Weekend Update when he read the news on SNL.
Oh.
So a lot of things he brought, from his own sort of routines. He talks about whores all the time in his routines.
But to get back to the argument we were making, I think it would have worked more for me if I had a bit more context to SNL way back when. But I think...
Yeah, I mean, this movie obviously was made for... the SNL fan. If you don't know, Norm Macdonald was very unceremoniously fired from SNL.
What? I think I heard about this.
Yeah, he made a lot of O.J. Simpson jokes.
Oh, no.
Which, why wouldn't you?
Hey, that's appropriate.
But the president of NBC at the time was or the president of comedy at NBC or whatever, was friends with O.J.
Yikes.
So he basically told Lorne Michaels, Norm Macdonald's gone. So, and he came back. Here's a typical Norm Macdonald joke.
Okay.
He came back to host SNL about 5 years later, and in his monologue said, well, it's funny how things work because about 5 years ago, I wasn't funny enough to even be allowed in the building, but now I'm standing here hosting, So I think this was sort of a wink and a nod to, hey, SNL fans, like, you miss Norm Macdonald, we gave him his own movie.
That's why I was surprised
You know?
it wasn't an SNL movie, because it seemed like
Yeah, well, and that's why, because at the time he was sort of blacklisted, from SNL.
unofficially one.
Unofficially, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't pop up too much other than doing stand-up. He was on one of Letterman's last shows and did a stand-up bit there, but yeah, I don't even see him much. But that is sort of his shtick, which is why this whole movie's love it or hate it. All right, well, that is going to do it for the show this week. Lots of ground to cover coming up before the Oscars. We still have Carol to hit. That's, big awards buzz there. So we'll do that on next week's show and much, much more. Joe, you've got the Star Trek videos that we're all a part of up on your channel, and lots of things on your channel. You've got the character analysis that you've been doing.
Yeah, I'm taking requests for all kinds of things. I posted, it was a request from show guest Peter for Best Anime Couples. So I did a video about
Right on.
that. Did a little discussion about Arrow and why I hate that show. That was kind of fun to do. And yeah, got a bunch of things coming as usual.
And X-Files.
X-Files, I'm actually planning to do like episode reactions for that when that comes on, because I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will do it for us. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that on our channel. And we've got the Facebook group at Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and our Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. You can join up there as well. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back here next week. Bye.